Okay, here we go. Artisan bread with Caputo flour. We can start off with my overall recipe for one loaf. You can also see my pizza recipe down below, both made with Caputo. And so we're going to start off with 400 grams of Caputo Fiora gluten-free flour. It's upside down. I'll turn it right side up. I think I have just about exactly 400 grams. So I'm going to throw it in here and see what I got. And we can put that right side up for you to see. I ended up at 359 grams. This is non-standard. I wouldn't usually do that, but I'm gonna catch myself up with a little bit of another very good gluten-free flour, which is the King Arthur brand. So I'll just go from 359 and get myself up to 400. Shouldn't have too much effect on the recipe. The two blends are pretty similar to each other. So the King Arthur is just a little bit rougher. I'll also use this in my bread basket and for shaping the loaf in a little bit. To that, we're gonna go ahead and add our 8 grams of yeast and 10 grams of salt. I do use Caputo yeast and just regular Morton salt, maybe a little bit non-standard to do so, but the regular salt. But it's better than fancy salt, kosher salt, because it's a little bit finer grind. I like to measure the salt and the yeast separately from the flour. And so I'm going to go until I have 10 grams of salt. I think it's always okay if I go a little over that, but that's perfect. And then I'm going to reset that and get myself my 8 grams of yeast, Caputo yeast. And 8 grams of yeast, when you measure it this way, seems like an awful lot of yeast. It looks that way, but I'm going to throw that into my flour. The order that goes in maybe could go in a little bit differently than that, but that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and take that over and put it on my stand mixer and just very easily mix that and blend that all together. I do use the whisk for this part of the process, and just get that set up. Give it a very gentle stir. With the Caputo flour, it is such a fine blend of flour that it can really flute out of the mixer if you run it too fast. So just let that get a nice stir while I go and get my water ready. Here we're looking for 340 grams of water. I'm a little bit over that, and so I'll just take a little bit out into my coffee mug, and ooh, that was almost perfect. And the recipe calls for the water to be absolutely as cold as you can make it, and so I'm not sure what the temperature is. This is as cold as I can make it, but there is my 340 grams of water. And while I've got my 340 grams of water set up, I'm going to go ahead and also get my 14 grams of olive oil, and I'll measure them into that wooden bowl. Unlike the yeast, it seems like 14 grams of olive oil is very little indeed. So I've got my water and I've got my olive oil. So I am back over to the stand mixer, and I feel like my dry ingredients are where I want them to be, and I am gonna go over to the paddle to do the rest of the work. I'm gonna get that going and let it go to work, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just very carefully incorporate my water into the mixture. I'm gonna lock it because it very quickly gets chunky and starts to want to move the mixer around. So anyway, there you can hear that slowing down. I've got it pretty well mixed, and the water's there, so I can now speed it up and get a good mix going for the bread base. I'm going to go ahead and stop it and do a quick scrape down just to make sure that I've got all the dry ingredients down in the wet dough. I'll probably do maybe another scrape down, but it all is pretty well incorporated. I'm going to let that go for a little bit longer, and then I'm going to add the olive oil. So the olive oil really changes the nature of the dough. And so I'm going to pour it in very slowly. I also don't want it spilling all over. I love olive oil. I don't want to waste any, and so I'm going to use my spatula to get every last drop of that in. And the rest of it will make its way in there when I go to do a scrape down. And what the heck, might as well do a scrape down right now as I'm getting ready to do the final mix on the flour. Get it all down in there, ready to go. I'm gonna stop the recording while I do this, but I'm going to let it go on high for about 4 minutes. So I'm gonna finish getting the dough scraped down into the center of the bowl, and this is the part of the video I've gotten through here. A, I needed some bread tonight, but B, I was talking to my friend Jake about parts of this process that are not described well on the recipe that's online. And so I like to get the bread, I like to shape it into a ball in the mixing bowl. That's a good look at it. And I'm getting that way so that it comes out more or less in that shape. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna throw plenty of flour onto my board. I'm gonna throw some flour into my basket. My basket is very well floured, but I'm gonna make sure it's got even more flour on it. And so just rub it around, make sure it's all good. Shake it down a little bit, and I can put the excess there, and I'll leave that to the side getting ready. And now comes what I think is, when I do this, the key part is I want to get this as one complete ball out of my mixing bowl onto my board. And so coaxing it out bit by bit and get it all out at once. I just feel like this helps with, for me, shaping a coherent loaf to get it all out properly the way I want it to be, and then to kind of get it down into as much of a ball as I can before I start to shape it. Got it. So there's my ball. It's sitting on the flour. It's not going to stick to the board. all is good. Now, is it going to stick to my hands? Well, hopefully not. I'm going to make sure that I've got plenty of flour on my hands as well before I go to work. And now I'm just going to start turning the loaf, turning it around, and pulling it down to the bottom, pulling it down to the bottom. And I'm trying to create a little bit of tension and smoothness on the top and get that nice, neat, smooth look on the top of the loaf. I don't really do too much of this. I just want to get it to look good. And now I'm shaping it out into the little bit of a football shape that's going to go into my basket. I've got it where I want it to be. And now I'll just turn it over and in it goes. I know that there's talk online and there's people who will work to do things about these cracks, but honestly the dough is going to rise into those, and I really don't worry about that very much and get pretty good results. Last thing I'm going to do is take my little shower cap and put it over the basket, good and tight to begin with, and I'm going to let that rise for probably 2 hours. The Caputo recipe says up to 5, but I feel like in my kitchen, if I went up to 5, it would take over the entire kitchen. So we're just going to let that sit. We can maybe move the camera a little bit so you can take a look at what that's like. But there it is with the shower cap on in the basket, I don't know, 2 inches below. And we are going to rise it until it is bulging over the top of the basket, which, as I said, in my kitchen takes about 2 hours. It's a little bit cooler today, so it may take a little bit more time. So here we go, pausing the video for a couple of hours before we get to the final step. One of the things I love about baking bread is that rising time, and here's our loaf is rising in the background. Gives you time to clean up. Just a quick comment on my baker, because I'm going to be moving quickly later on, and so I won't have a chance to talk about it. Got this off of Amazon. The brand is called Basilico. Super heavy cast iron baker, and works like a charm. So I'm going to be preheating this in the oven, which is going to be at 460 degrees, and then we're going to put the loaf right in this when we're ready to go. So quick talk about the baker and how it works. Keeps it sealed, keeps the moisture in there, and enhances the rise of the loaf later on. Next stop, we'll be taking the loaf out of the rising basket and putting it into the baker in the oven. Here is just a quick check-in at an hour of rising. You can see that the bread is just about up to the top of the rising basket. So I lift the plastic up a little bit to get it out of the way. And now is time to turn the oven on to 460 for preheating with the baker in the oven so that it's good and hot when it's time. So this is 1 hour of rising, and we'll let it go about another 45 minutes and it should be ready to put in. Okay, here we go for the final countdown. The bread has been rising for an hour and a half, and really and truly, it goes so fast. I don't see how it could possibly go for 4 hours. So I take a piece of parchment paper that's about the width of the basket and cut it to make a little bit of a sling to use to move the bread. And don't want too much of the paper hanging outside of the basket. And so basically, I can take the bread like this, I flip it over, and off comes the basket. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. I want to go right away into the oven, and I can turn the camera around and hopefully get a pretty good view of what's going on there. The baker is in and set, both top and bottom. I'll lift my bread with my sling and place it into the baker. And then I like to trim off the extra paper. Don't need that. There. And you have to watch out because it's all super, super hot. I take my lom, give it probably 4 good deep slashes across the top. Grab my spritzer, just a little bit of extra moisture, and on goes the top of the baker. Get it on there nice and tight. Lock that moisture in, and in we go for, we'll go 35 minutes at 460 we bake. Okay, 35 minutes is up, and it is time for the big reveal. And we'll take the lid off. Oh my goodness, look at that beautiful oven spring, looking good. And we'll put it back in for about another 15 minutes. Okay, here we go. Been 15 minutes. I don't really need to do this because I know what the result is going to be. But if you want to make sure you're done, the bread should register 209 degrees. And there it is, 209 degrees. So I know that I'm going to be where I want to be. And so here we go. We'll bring it over, close the oven, and out it comes. And there it is, a perfect loaf of artisan bread. Get a little close up on that. And done.